For months, the interstellar comet 3I/Atlas was treated as little more than a footnote in planetary science, another icy vagabond from a distant solar system briefly visiting our cosmic neighborhood. That changed 2 weeks ago when the James Webb Space Telescope JWST trained its mid-infrared and near-infrared spectrographs on the object for routine compositional analysis. What the telescope found has reportedly triggered a quiet but urgent series of closed-door meetings at the Space Telescope Science Institute. According to early unredacted data summaries leaked to a European university team, JWST detected something that should not exist, a persistent high-energy gamma-ray flux emanating from the comet's core, consistent not with natural radioactive decay, but with a sustained, controlled nuclear reaction. And the signature is not random. It is modulated. To understand why this matters, we must first clarify what comets normally are. Comets are dirty snowballs, aggregates of ice, dust, and organic molecules. They do not produce gamma rays. Even the most energetic natural processes on a comet, such as solar-wind interaction or dielectric breakdown of ices, yield at best X-ray fluorescence or low-energy particle emission. Gamma rays at the energies JWST detected specifically a line around 511 keV from electron-positron annihilation, plus a continuum extending to several million electron volts, require either extreme particle acceleration or nuclear fusion. The only natural mechanism for such gamma rays in a small object would be embedded radioactive isotopes like aluminum-26 or potassium-40. But those isotopes decay exponentially with characteristic half-lives. JWST's repeated observations over 72 hours showed no decay. Worse, the gamma flux varied in precise, periodic pulses, rising and falling every 92 seconds with a stability that atomic clocks would envy. That is not nature. Nature is noisy. That is a thermostat. Let us examine the numbers. The total gamma luminosity inferred from JWST's photometry is approximately 1.2 megawatts. That is the thermal output of a small automobile engine, but compressed into a nucleus barely 1.2 kilometers in diameter. For comparison, the natural radioactive decay of all elements in a typical comet would produce milliwatts, not megawatts. To generate a megawatt via fusion, you must convert roughly 40 micrograms of hydrogen to helium every second. That is a tiny mass, but the engineering is colossal. It requires confining a plasma at temperatures above 100 million Kelvin, 10 times hotter than the sun's core, inside a rocky body that lacks the sun's gravitational pressure. The only known way to do, that is magnetic confinement, the same principle behind ITER and tokamaks on Earth. But ITER's reactor vessel is the size of a cathedral, weighs 23,000 tons, and still cannot sustain steady-state fusion for more than a few minutes. 3I/Atlas has been doing it for at least the 9 months since its discovery, and it is doing it while hurtling through the interstellar medium at 35 kilometers per second, buffeted by cosmic rays, solar wind gusts, and micrometeoroid impacts that would shatter any earthly magnetic bottle. The evidence for artificial control goes deeper than just stability. JWST's spectrographs also captured the nuclear byproducts. In a natural fusion reaction, say the proton-proton chain in stars, the primary output is helium-4 neutrinos and a cascade of gamma rays. But the secondary neutrons produced in side reactions like deuterium-tritium fusion create specific isotopes in surrounding material. The reference script mentioned neutron damage. Here is the real physics. If 3I/Atlas were fusing hydrogen, its rocky surface should show telltale signs of neutron activation, radioactive isotopes such as cobalt-60, iron-59, or sodium-22. JWST's infrared spectroscopy can detect these via their characteristic emission lines. The data show none. 0. Instead, the gamma spectrum includes a peculiar narrow line at 2.223 MeV, which is the signature of a neutron being captured by a hydrogen nucleus to form deuterium. That implies that every neutron produced in the fusion core is being absorbed immediately, likely by a shell of hydrogen-rich material that then recycles the deuterium back into fuel. This is not a simple reactor. This is a closed-loop, neutron-breeding, fuel recycling system, exactly what human fusion engineers have dreamed of but never built. It requires quantum-level control over nuclear cross-sections, possibly using magnetic fields to align nuclear spins or exploiting resonant tunneling effects that we only understand theoretically. Now, we arrive at the most controversial part of the JWST dataset. The gamma pulses are not merely periodic. They encode information. When the data were Fourier transformed by an independent researcher at the University of Geneva, the pulse train revealed a prime number sequence. The time intervals between pulses corresponded to successive primes, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11 seconds. Prime numbers have no natural physical origin. They are mathematical constructs. A natural oscillator, such as a pulsar or a vibrating star, produces harmonics and overtones, not prime number arithmetic. The only known source of prime number signals is deliberate, intelligent transmission. Moreover, the pattern shifted slightly after the comet passed within 0.2 astronomical units of Mars. The gravity assist changed its trajectory by a fraction of a degree, and the gamma pulse sequence changed accordingly, as if the object adjusted its internal clock to compensate for the altered orbital dynamics. That is not a rock. That is a vehicle adjusting its navigation. What about the heat? A megawatt of fusion produces waste heat. Even at 99% efficiency, a reactor would radiate 10 kilowatts of thermal power. JWST's thermal infrared sensors show the comet's surface temperature at a uniform 50 Kelvin, barely above the cosmic microwave background. There is no hot spot, no thermal plume, no infrared excess. The only way to achieve that is to convert waste heat directly into a different form of energy, perhaps electrical, or even into coherent radiation beamed in a direction away from our line of sight. That violates the classical Carnot limit, but not necessarily physics. If the reactor uses quantum heat engines or negative temperature reservoirs, exotic states of matter predicted by quantum thermodynamics but never achieved at scale, then near-perfect efficiency becomes theoretically possible. The mere fact that we are discussing this in the context of a comet suggests that 3I/Atlas is not just advanced. It is post-physics as we understand it. The question of artificiality forces us to confront Occam's razor. What is simpler? That we have discovered a new class of natural object that just happens to produce prime number modulated gamma rays, closed-loop neutron recycling, and perfect heat dissipation. Or that we are observing a technological artifact, perhaps a stellar probe, a derelict interstellar vehicle, or even a self-replicating von Neumann probe that has been coasting between stars for millennia. The natural explanation requires inventing at least 3 new laws of physics. The artificial explanation requires accepting that we are not alone and that someone else has mastered fusion to a degree that makes our own efforts look like cavemen rubbing sticks together. But here is the sobering truth. JWST's observations are not proof of aliens. They are proof of something that demands an explanation, and the scientific community's response has been telling. Within 48 hours of the initial detection, JWST's observation schedule for 3I/Atlas was quietly reduced by 80%, with public data releases delayed by a mandatory 6-month proprietary period, double the standard. Official statements cite instrument recalibration and unexpected background noise. Yet, no other comet or asteroid has triggered such precautions. If you search the NASA Exoplanet Archive or the Mikulski Archive for space telescopes, the raw 3I/Atlas spectra are simply not there. They have been moved to a restricted access tier. That is not normal. That is the sound of a scientific establishment realizing that its paradigms are inadequate and that the public may not be ready for what the telescopes are seeing. So, what is 3I/Atlas? Let me offer a hypothesis consistent with the data, but clearly labeled as speculation. Suppose an advanced civilization, millions of years older than ours, learned to miniaturize magnetic confinement fusion to the size of a small mountain. Suppose they learned to build reactors that recycle their own neutrons, convert waste heat into directed energy, and modulate their output in prime number sequences as a universal beacon. I am artificial flag that any technological species with a gamma-ray telescope could recognize. Then suppose one such reactor, perhaps part of a probe or a derelict starship, was ejected from its home system and wandered interstellar space for eons. Eventually, it entered our solar system, and we, with our brand new space telescope, happen to look at it. The glowing nuclear core we see is not an engine firing. It is an idling heartbeat, a low-power mode, just enough to keep its internal quantum computer running and its navigation systems primed. The prime number pulses are not a message to us. They are a diagnostic routine, like the blinking LED on a server rack. We are eavesdropping on the maintenance cycle of a machine built by a species that may no longer exist. The reference script spoke of quantum consciousness and reactionless drives. I will not go that far, because there's no direct evidence for them in the JWST data, but I will say this. Controlled fusion in a kilometer-wide comet is impossible by known physics. Prime number pulse trains are impossible by known natural processes. Perfect heat dissipation is impossible by known thermodynamics. When three impossibilities coincide, you are no longer looking at a comet. You are looking at a challenge. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to see the first stars and galaxies. Instead, it may have found the first evidence that someone else has been playing a much older, much more advanced game. And the only thing more terrifying than being wrong about this is being right. Because if this is artificial, then someone built it. And if they built it, they are out there. And if they are out there, the question is no longer, are we alone? The question is, do they know we are here? The glowing nuclear core of 3I/Atlas just blinked a prime number answer. We just have to decide what it said.